All right, we're back with another give and take, this time with a lovely young lady who's decided she needs to educate men on how the conversation about the man versus bear needs to go. So let's hear what she has to say, and then I'll interject how I think the conversation should go.
This is how the conversation about the man versus bear should have happened. Hi, I'm a woman, and if I were to be alone with either a bear or a man in the woods, I would choose the bear. I'm a man, and that makes me really angry. I would never hurt you. I'm a good man.
Notice her quote-unquote man is angry. She's assigning an emotion to that man and all men, when the reality is men are not angry about it. Now let's hear what men are really thinking. Well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm wondering, why do you feel that way? Because while you may think it makes me angry, what it really does is cause some confusion. And I'm trying to understand this logically, not emotionally. And the fact that you think you're safer with a wild animal that would just as soon eviscerate you and eat your intestines while you're still alive versus a man doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So could you clarify it a little bit?
That may be true, but it's impossible to tell which man is good and which man is not good.
Did you happen to notice how she just completely dismissed the man's thoughts, feelings, and emotions? Something women do to men every single time they want to have a conversation? Well, let's set that aside and give the man's actual thoughts in response. Interesting, but I have a question for you. If that generalization that you're making is true, then wouldn't it also be the same in reverse? I mean, there's a ton of bad women out there, and there's also some good ones. But men can no more tell who's good and bad than women. So are you okay with me generalizing you and making the assumption that you're inherently bad simply because you're a woman? Are you willing to admit that you, and indeed all women, are grapists, capable of committing heinous crimes, not just against men, but other women and children? Are you also willing to admit that there's a huge risk to men, all men, of having a false allegation placed against them by a woman simply because she wants to get back at him or because she can? Because logically, men should assume every single woman is bad. We should assume every single one of you is dangerous, more dangerous than a bear. And therefore, you and every woman should be assumed to be bad until you prove otherwise. Because if, as you're claiming, you want this to be a conversation, then we're going to need you to acknowledge our thoughts, feelings, and emotions as well. We're going to need to have this be a two-way street, not the one-way street you're trying to make it into. So I ask you, are you and all women willing to live by the very same standards you're applying to men? Because if you're not, you're a complete and utter hypocrite.
I've also been hurt by a lot of men in my past, so I'd rather take my chances with the bear. That's understandable. Is there anything I could do to help with that?
Now let's hear what an actual man would think and say. Well, that's understandable, but let me ask you this. I've been hurt by women in the past. So is pretty much every guy out there. So how is it any different? Why is it you think it's okay for you to have these feelings, but not us?
Yes. Please hold the men around you accountable. Thank you.
And the real man answer to that one? Interesting that you demand that we hold other men accountable when you don't hold yourselves accountable, let alone any other women. Again, you're claiming you want this to be a dialogue, a conversation, but yet you're applying standards one way and not the other. It makes no sense logically, and it reeks of double standard and hypocrisy, which is why men aren't willing to have this conversation, because the reality is it's actually the women who don't want to have this conversation. They expect men to sit down, shut up, and take it. They aren't willing to take responsibility or show any kind of accountability for themselves or other women, yet they demand it from men. And any man who dares to speak up, who dares to want to have an actual conversation, they want silenced. They don't want to hear it. They don't care, which is why men are literally laughing about it all, because it demonstrates better than anything else ever has the mindset of today's modern women and the double standards that they live by.